Okay, guys, so in this lecture, we are going to talk about an introduction to the muscle development, and we're going to see how muscles are developed and how they're derived from different germ layers. Well, not actually different germ layers, from a particular type of germ layer that gives rise to the development of muscles. Okay, this is an introductory lecture. Okay, and eventually after this lecture we are going to build upon the concepts in this lecture in the upcoming lectures. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so muscle is basically a connective tissue of the body. Okay, and it's actually a sort of a permanent tissue. Okay, there are three types of muscles in your body: the skeletal muscles, the cardiac muscles, and the smooth muscles. Okay, and these are the three basic muscles in your body. Okay, and before we move on to the muscles there, I would like to tell you that mesoderm is the germ layer from which the muscles are derived. Okay, it is one of the three germ layers. Okay, the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Mesoderm is one of the three germ layers from which the entire human is made, or the body is made of the embryo. Okay, now if we talk about the derivatives of mesoderm, before talking about the derivatives of mesoderm, we have to see how many types of mesoderms are there. Well, actually, the mesoderm itself is divided into three types. It first splits into three major types: the paraxial mesoderm, the intermediate mesoderm, and the lateral plate mesoderm. And after splitting into these types, the paraxial mesoderm, it gives rise to the skeletal muscles of the body, okay, which are actually the voluntary muscles of the body, okay, associated with the skeletal system. And the skeletal muscles, along with the along with the skeleton of the body, form the musculoskeletal system of the body. Okay, the musculoskeletal system, and this musculoskeletal system is actually needed for locomotion and movement. Okay, anyways, that's a completely separate discussion. Before that, now the second type of mesoderm, well, the mesoderm, it divides into the second type, which is the intermediate mesoderm, and then the third type of mesoderm is the lateral plate mesoderm. Okay, now these are the three basic types into which the mesoderm first broadly divides. The lateral plate mesoderm then further divides into two types. Okay, the somatic mesoderm. This somatic mesoderm, it surrounds the amniotic cavity, and we are gonna just about to see in a few minutes how it looks like. And then the visceral mesoderm, it surrounds the yolk sac. Okay, and it is also known as the splanchnic mesoderm. Okay, I'll write it down. It's also known as the splanchnic mesoderm, and this is known as the somatic mesoderm, or also known as the parietal mesoderm. Okay, as the word suggests, somatic, soma means body, so somatic means body wall, related to body wall, so it actually forms the muscles of the body wall and the limbs as well. Okay, so muscles of the body wall and the limbs are derived from the somatic mesoderm. Okay, or which is also known as the parietal mesoderm, whereas the involuntary muscles such as the cardiac muscles, the smooth muscles, they are derived from the visceral mesoderm right over here. Okay, viscera is related to the internal organs. Okay, internal organs are actually related to smooth muscles. For example, the gut is entirely lined by smooth muscles. Okay, and that's a visceral portion of the body. Now, so we've talked about the cardiac muscles and the smooth muscles. Both of them are derived from the visceral mesoderm. Now, this was a broad classification of the types of mesoderms. Okay, mesoderm first divides into paraxial, intermediate, and lateral plate mesoderm. Paraxial, okay, then the lateral plate mesoderm has further two types: the somatic and visceral. Okay, for now, just know these names. I'm just gonna talk in a few minutes in detail about these. Okay, now coming over here, the derivatives of mesoderm. Okay, so I told you in the beginning of the lecture that the derivatives are mainly the muscles of the body. Okay, almost all the muscles of the body are derived from the mesoderm. Okay, all muscles are derived from mesoderms, but there is an exception. Okay, the exception of muscles that are not derived from the mesoderm but rather are derived from another layer, the ectoderm. Okay, there is an exception that there are types of smooth muscles that are also derived from ectoderm. Okay, those types are actually right over here. The splank, okay, it's the pupillary smooth muscles, the muscles which are present in the smooth muscles present in the pupil. Okay, the smooth muscles of the sweat gland and the mammary gland. Mammary gland, well, actually the milk producing glands, they are also, you guys know that these are also modified sweat glands. So it kind of makes sense that if the sweat gland muscles are derived from the ectoderm, these are also the modified form of sweat glands. Therefore, modified sweat glands, therefore they will also be derived from the ectoderm. Okay, so these three muscles are an exception to the rule of muscle development. Well, apart from these three, all other muscles are derived from the mesoderm. Okay, and we are gonna now look at the three types in a bit detail. Okay, so the three types of muscles are the skeletal muscles, which are really associated with the skeleton of the body and form the musculoskeletal system, and hence allow the locomotion of the body. These skeletal muscles are derived from the paraxial mesoderm. Okay, what does paraxial mean? Paraxial. Okay, this PAR actually is from the word parallel. And axial, you guys know what axial means. Axial means something that is related to the midline of the body. Remember, the axial skeleton is located at the midline of the body. Okay, so basically this is a sort of mesoderm that is present in parallel to the midline of the body. Okay, and if we look at a few diagrams right over here, I can show you the paraxial mesoderm. Okay, now for instance, this is a photo. These images have been taken from your book, Langman. Okay, if you look at the notochord right over here, this notochord, from your knowledge of embryology, previous knowledge, you know that it is present in the midline of the body. Now, right parallel to the notochord, right parallel to the midline, this red region over here, this is what forms the paraxial mesoderm. Okay, this red mesodermal layer, it forms the paraxial mesoderm, and it is on both the sides of the midline, and it is right parallel to the midline, and it travels along the cranial caudal axis of the embryo. Cranial caudal axis is that axis is, well, cranial means head region and caudal means tail region. So basically an axis from the head to the tail region. So from throughout the length of the embryo, the paraxial mesoderm remains parallel to the midline of the body of the embryo. Okay, that's why it's called the paraxial mesoderm. So I hope this would let you learn this for a longer time. Okay, this is how you learn the stuff. But at least that's how I remember this paraxial mesoderm. Okay, and by the way, if you know that it's right next to the midline, also keep in mind that the paraxial mesoderm, it gives rise to the skeletal muscles of the body. Okay, now this was about the discussion on the skeletal muscles of the body. Now let's move on to the cardiac muscles and the smooth muscles. Okay, cardiac muscles which are present in the heart, and they are composed of the cardiac myocytes. Okay, these the cardiac myocytes are the cells present in there in the heart. Okay, they are derived from the visceral or the splanchnic mesoderm. Okay, this classification right over here, the visceral mesoderm or the splanchnic mesoderm, which is actually a subtype of the lateral plate mesoderm. Okay, now before we move on, I okay, let me complete this part and then I'll show you each of these mesoderms on the diagram as well. Okay, the intermediate and the lateral plate mesoderm. So cardiac muscles, they have the least regenerative capacity. Okay, basically if the cells die out, the cardiac myocytes, they die out, they are not replaced, they are actually replaced by scar tissue instead. So the function of the heart muscles is lost. Okay, and scar tissue, scarring occurs, fibrosis occurs. Okay, and so for example in the myocardial infarction, a lot of cardiac mass is lost, or some of it is lost, and then it is not replaced but rather scar tissue forms. So cardiac muscles, this is a high yield point you guys should know. Cardiac muscles are have the least regenerative capacity. Okay, they are derived from the splanchnic mesoderm. Then and they are also involuntary, as you guys already know. Now coming to the smooth muscles are have the most regenerative capacity. Okay, and they are also derived from the splanchnic mesoderm. They are also involuntary. A few minutes ago, I told you the exception over here in the smooth muscles, that all the smooth muscles are derived from the mesoderm, but the smooth muscles of the pupil, the pupillary smooth muscles, the sweat gland, and the mammary gland, they are not derived from the mesoderm, but rather they are derived from the ectoderm. Okay, this is an exception. I would suggest keep that in mind because such exceptions are usually high yield. Okay,